The image of Jesus as the shepherd is perhaps one of the most well-known in our biblical history. Paintings and statues and sculptures, some of the earliest frescoes from the catacombs in Rome, depict Jesus as a shepherd. The 23rd Psalm, which the singers will sing at the conclusion of the sermon, is perhaps our best-known psalm. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Somehow Jesus as a shepherd has become a soft image in our collective minds. Maybe it's the cute woolly lambs, or that kind of image we have of Jesus' long hair standing on a hill with his shepherd's crook, looking romantic and rustic and bucolic. Of course, in reality, shepherds were a really tough bunch, like they are today, living and working outdoors in all weathers, keeping their sheep safe from the wolves and the rustlers, finding water and pasture for them in a very dry Palestine, making sure they grew ready for market. The prophet Ezekiel picks up the strength of the shepherds when he accuses the leaders of his day of not being shepherds to the people. Ezekiel says, "Ah, you shepherds of Israel who have been feeding yourselves, should not the shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, you slaughter the fatlings, but you do not feed the sheep. You have not strengthened the weak, you have not healed the sick, you have not bound up the injured, you have not brought back the strayed, you have not sought the lost, but with force and harshness you have ruled them." And so they were scattered because there was no shepherd, and they became food for the wild animals. My sheep were scattered, they wandered over all the mountains, with no one to search or to seek for them. Ezekiel rails for some time about how the leaders have failed the people and how God is now going to step in and be the shepherd for the people instead. The leaders have failed and God will now be their shepherd. So when Jesus picks up the metaphor of the shepherd for himself, his listeners would recognise many well-known Old Testament passages like Ezekiel. And Jesus continues the theme of criticising the leaders of his day. This time it's the Pharisees for their lack in care of the people, and at times their abuse of the people. The passage that we heard read this morning from the Gospel of John follows directly on from the healing of the blind man, during which Jesus offers a very strong critique of the Pharisees. And then he barely catches a breath before he's after them again, upping the temperature levels by calling them thieves and bandits. They are the ones who are going to climb the walls of the sheepfold at night and steal the sheep. Jesus says they are the ones who come to steal and kill and destroy. This really strong language that he uses has another layer in behind it. During the siege of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD, which of course is before John wrote his gospel, the sheep gate, which was one of the gates in the temple, was blocked by the revolutionaries who were fighting the Romans. As the Roman troops closed in, the extremist Jewish fighters would not let the people hiding in the temple escape to safety through the sheep gate. There was no shepherd to lead them out. The gate was locked. So this memory was seared into the minds of those who did eventually escape the slaughter and leave Jerusalem to the sacking Romans. One commentator says that this word should be the word translated bandit really means insurrectionist or revolutionary. We might use the word terrorist. This Mother's Day, the mothers of the girls kidnapped in Nigeria are praying that a shepherd might lead their girls to safety when their own government has seemingly done nothing. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign has drawn the world's attention to the plight of these girls, and we pray today that they will be brought to safety. And then we think of the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of other girls in our world trapped with gates closed, in poverty and with no access to education, and no shepherd to lead them out. The emotion and the anger that has been aroused in the world about the girls in Nigeria gives us maybe an insight into the character of the words of John's Gospel, carefully chosen to arouse the emotion and memory of the listeners of his day, remembering the revolutionaries of 70 AD. John layers all these images in his account of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And whenever the Gospel writers go after the religious leaders of the day, we, who are religious leaders of today, could well pay attention. We too can easily fall in behind the Pharisees, who liked to make the rules, be in control, and who had no doubts as to who God is or what God says and does, because God says and does what the Pharisees say God says and does. The Pharisees, I think, are our ultimate gatekeepers. Today, the General Synod Te Hinota Whanui of our church meets at Waitangi. This is quite a big deal. It meets only once every 2 years and gathers representatives from all our dioceses and Huiamorangi and includes the Diocese of Polynesia. General Synod is the place where decisions that affect the life of our whole church are made. Tomorrow, the Synod will hear a report from the Mawhea Commission on same-gender blessings and ordinations. This commission has been led by former Governor-General Sir Anyan Satanyand, and they've had meetings and taken submissions all over the province in the last year. Some of you, I know, were involved in presenting to them. So the Commission has come back with their report and have presented the Church with 10 options. And it's now like a secret Anglican code as people discuss whether they want option D or option I or option E. And once the Synod has heard the report and the debates, the members of the General Synod will have the future of our church in their hands. They have a clear choice in front of them. Will they close the gate and try and keep the church locked in the 1950s or maybe the 1850s, thinking that if they all pile up in the gate and stand there, they can stop the movement for justice and inclusion of our lesbian and gay sisters and brothers, which our hearts so yearn to see? Or will they open the gate, and will they follow Jesus the Shepherd, who is calling them by name to come out from behind their fears and their prejudices? Jesus the Shepherd is calling them by name to welcome all equally at this table and in this pulpit and at the altar to be married and at the altars of churches across our nation. We here at St Matthew's have long had the gates open wide, and we are richer for it. And we call today on our leaders to step up, to be without fear, and to allow the voice of the shepherd to call them forward. The time of waiting is over. We will wait no longer. We will wait no longer to welcome all equally to preside at this table, to preach in this pulpit, and to be married at this altar. Unfortunately, we know that even if General Synod makes a positive move this week for the blessing of same-gender unions, the equality of marriage will still be a way off because it involves complicated changes to our constitution. But all the more reason for the process to get started today. And in the meantime, our clergy who are already ordained and living in same-gender relationships will be freed from the tyranny of double standards, and those awaiting ordination can pass through the gate as well. Jesus says at the end of our passage today, "I came that they might have life and have it abundantly." I came not to lock people up in the temple. I came not to lock them up in the sheepfold. I came not to tie them up in rules and outdated biblical interpretations. I came that they might have life. Life, love, companionship, service and calling, work and joy and freedom, bread and wine and prayer, a future, a hope, a purpose, life in abundance. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Please God, make it so.